So, my name's Scotty Mills, and I spent 32 years in Her Majesty's Royal Marines, Britain's Commandos, the Green Berets, where my last job in the Marines was as head of performance for all 6,500 Royal Marines. So, a supreme privilege of a job working with some incredible people. It was never my intention to join the Marines. I used to be into ice skating and roller skating and the like back in the late 80s. And my adopted parents, my nan and granddad, had saved really hard for me to have these skates. And I was going down Streatham High Street in South London. I'm a South London boy, come from a humble background, Peckham lad actually. And I was going down there with my skates and it started to rain. I didn't want to get my skates rusted. So I dived into the local shop, and it just so happened that that local shop was the Royal Marines recruiting office. Isn't it funny in life where sometimes you turn left or you turn right, or it rains or it doesn't rain, and it changes the vector of your life? Well, it certainly did for me. And as I'm looking down the high street, stood in the shop frontage, waiting for the rain to stop, I get a tap on the shoulder. And there's this guy stood there with his green beret on. And he said to me, "You look like a fit lad. Can you do pull-ups?" So he's dragged me inside, doing a few pull-ups, and my skates still over my shoulder, and he said something positive to me, and I hadn't had much of that in my life at that time. In fact, I'm fairly sure that if I hadn't joined the Marines, I'd have ended up in prison or drugs or dead because of all the peer pressure and the way that my life was going at the moment. And he said to me, he said, "Young man, I see some potential in you. You should come think about joining the Marines." So he gave me some paperwork after I'd done my pull-ups. I went to see my granddad, my adopted dad, and he'd worked alongside them in the war. And he said, "Look, son," he said, "that's the longest and the hardest training in the world. But if you get through that and then your green beret, it will change your." And of course he was right. I remember going down to the Commando Training Centre of the Marines down in Devon, beautiful part of the world. And when I got down there, I was only 19 years old. I saw these instructors with their green berets on who were living their lives by a different metric to me. They were using words like humility, words like integrity, phrases like understated excellence. I knew very little about what they meant, but I saw these junior leaders in front of me who would never ask you to do something that they wouldn't do themselves. They'd always get down in front of you, whether it's crawling down in the mud and getting dirty. They'd always get down there with you. And I've always remembered that going on to my future leadership positions, about making sure you inspire your people, making sure you show them that you're prepared to get down and do everything that you're asking them to do. I think it's a great way for me to start in my career, to see such inspirational people who were like real role models to me. I mean, you speak to the youngest recruit all the way up to the oldest veteran, and everybody that's served within the 358-year history of the Royal Marines, they will instantly be able to tell you about the commando values: courage, determination, unselfishness, and cheerfulness, especially in the face of adversity. Why can they do that? Well, what the Marines very skillfully do, and 20 years later, having gone on to go and command a lot of the training itself, everywhere you go at our commando training centre, there's posters with words on the wall. What the Marines do, they take the words off of the poster and they place them within you. And it becomes a way of life, and you start to live these values every single day. Not very subtle how the Marines do it. They make you cold and wet and tired and hungry. They give you something to do that you couldn't do on your own. You have to demonstrate these values, not by what you talk about, but by what you do. Because that's how the Marines judge you. They judge you on what you do and how you do it. They don't care whether you've got black skin, whether you're ginger, whether you're Scottish. They don't care. And they never have done. They always judge you in regards of the values that are inextricably linked to the power of agreement. The trainings are, but I loved it. And as I went through, I realised that I was growing every day. Having that growth, open mindset to be willing to learn things is something I found a real positive that's allowed me to be able to develop my life. Of course, you need these incredible people along the way who are prepared to invest their time and energy and effort into you. And I've never forgotten that, lads. So many mentors that have helped me to develop over not just that period of the Marines training, but then subsequently beyond, where once you earn your Green Beret, which is a very proud day, and I talk a lot more about that in my motivational speeches. But, you know, once you've earned it, then you realise that it was a job interview, one of the hardest job interviews you could possibly ever do, an 8-month one. But then you are going to go and serve Britain's commandos all around the globe on deployments and operations. I've been to 86 countries on 7 continents. Woods and mountains and jungles and deserts. The coldest I've ever been is minus 76 degrees Celsius. That is chilly. You spit on the floor when it's ice before it hits the floor. Your eyes freeze together from the moisture. Every single part of your body's got to be covered up. Otherwise, it will turn black and drop off. And work in these environments means ask you to give 100%. People talk when I go and speak to different businesses and organisations from different industries around the globe. People talk to me about 120, 150%. Well, not in my book. I think the most you can give is 100%. But I do believe that you can grow that 100%. And that's what the Marines did for me. They helped me to grow. So when I was a youngster, when I had my roller skates on, my 100% was down here. But then when I finished Marines training, my 100% had grown to here. And now, 30 odd years later, where I tried to live a life that's based central around these values, well, you know, you realise that there is no glass ceiling to what is possible. And you know, having then subsequently gone on to go and work with people across a raft of different industries, from some of the highest profile sports teams we've got in the world, helping them to develop the mindset, the values and the ethos and that winning mentality that Wolverines is renowned for, is something that I'm extremely proud of. I work with Olympic champions, gold medal winners, England football teams, world record holders, broken a world record himself, been part of an incredible team, and you know, to have been a leader in some of these teams and helping them to get the very best out, something that I am extremely proud of, and I love sharing my stories and anecdotes with people, and hopefully where they can see how I build winning teams. Some of the teams that I've had the privilege to work alongside over many years now.
How can businesses cultivate a winning mindset in their employees?
Well, a winning mindset is something that the Royal Marines, Britain's Commandos, the Green Berets, has got a very, very strong reputation for, that's been built up over 350 odd years. As far as business is concerned, having worked across multiple businesses in different industries, what I've noticed is that teams can help to build a winning mindset by getting some of the little things right. Some of those little things might revolve around company values. Now, I've seen many businesses and organisations that have values, but one of my metrics, one of my tests when I go into work with an organisation is I ask people if they know what their company values are. I won't necessarily go up to the CEO and ask them, but I'll certainly go and speak to some of the more junior members to see if they understand what's important to the business, what the company's behaviours, norms, values, ethos, mindset is, and see if they really have really bought into it. And it gives me a real indication about how a company's functioning and how an organisation's functioning as well. Something that I do whenever I'm working with a company from a different industry is that it's really important for me to listen to you about where you are in your journey, what direction you're going, how you have developed values within your organisations as well, so that, you know, I can then come in and share some of my experiences and some of my life lessons as well, so that hopefully I can help you to reinforce your values within your organisation as well. You know, I know how important it is for leaders to set conditions for success and to set that tone and environment in the team where people feel invested and they enjoy coming to work. I mean, you know, if you enjoy doing what you're doing, then you're luckier than the next person, and that can help you get out of bed in the morning, can help motivate and to drive you going forwards. Something that I have noticed about cultivating a winning mindset is the little things, the things where the devil is in the detail. And if you can get the little things right, and it takes an incredible amount of hard work. Often times, you know, I can think of all the times when I'm part of a team where people are working in the background, where they're doing all of those little things that no one ever gets to see. All of that detail, all that hard work. And when you get those things right, all of a sudden these little things all add up to something that's quite considerable. When you start to get the big things right, well, in my experience, that's where some of the magic starts. I think that success and high performance, whilst that's what people are looking for, I do believe and I do know that that's just a byproduct. Results and success is a byproduct of getting things right. When you can come together as a team, when you have a common purpose, when you have inspirational leaders, when you are resilient, when you can perform under pressure and overcome as a team, together, side by side, ready to bleed with each other on the battlefield, or maybe even on the sports field, or maybe even in business, when you're prepared to stand side by side with people, go through the good times and the bad, the hard times as well, then come through it the other end, you'll find that you're so much stronger for it. But when I think of a winning mindset, it's not necessarily about when everything's going swimming in roses. It's when serious stuff happens and how you overcome it together. And you come together as a team to go through the other end and come out of it better, stronger, better position.
What are the main essential qualities of a high performance team?
In my experience, having led Britain's commandos around the world on operations and deployments all over the world, and then subsequently worked with some of the highest performing teams around the globe, whether that's sports teams or businesses, it's probably three essential qualities that really ring back to me every single time. The first one is inspirational leadership. I'm a great believer that leaders should lead from the front and set the tone and the environment for the success of any organisation. Inspirational leader, of course, will be able to bring a team together. So that togetherness, that team unity, building a ring of steel, much like the Marines do, and where it's impenetrable, where you forge that ring of steel together and you are stronger for it. So togetherness, I think, is one of the most important qualities of a high performance team. And then there's the resilience aspect. How do you get back up when things aren't going so well? When you have a perceived failure, I like to replace the word failure with learning. The Marines talk about, you know, becoming accustomed to uncertainty so that when things don't go right, you've been there before, you know you can do it, you know you can come through it together. So three key qualities that I'm always looking for in people and in teams: inspirational leadership, togetherness, that resilience to be able to bounce back.
How can a negative workplace culture impact a team's ability to perform?
Well, yes, most definitely. And that toxicity within a team can be extremely damaging. First of all, you know, for whatever reason, we've seen this in the past where, you know, relationships can be destroyed within a team as well. And having that negative workplace culture can really erode morale and thereby reduce your performance as well. And having that fractured team cohesion where everybody's going off in a different direction means you're not pulling together, you're not working together, you've not got that common purpose. And whilst, you know, I would say it'll always encourage people with different ideas and different mindsets that don't think the same to come together. As long as you don't make it personal, you can challenge each other, you can support each other through, don't necessarily have to think the same way, and sometimes that can really enhance a business. And having that ability to be able to be innovative, be listened to have that, to be encouraged to be creative as well. Some of the real positives in the way that different people think in different ways. If you can learn how to collaborate with teams together, to bring people together so that you don't have a negative workplace culture, but you have one of learning, one that's always learning. Got that growth mindset where people can learn from each other, you can learn from mistakes, and you can come together so that you can come out of it the other side better, stronger, and better as well. So having that disjointed purpose and that direction is something which a negative workplace culture can really have a poor effect on, really. But once again, I think this is an area where, you know, inspirational, strong leaders who understand the privilege of leadership, encourage the very best out of their people with innovation and ideas. More importantly, are prepared to listen to those ideas and act upon them. It's something that creates a really positive workplace culture that then leads towards high performance.
So when faced with a challenge or with failure, what is the first thing a business must do?
Oh, well, I see challenge and failure as two different things. You know, I can think of many challenges which sometimes are imposed on you, sometimes challenges which you choose to do by raising your head above the parapet as well. You know, I could think of many personal experiences. You know, 2013 tried to break a world record. It's to do with speed marching, where you move a group of people from one place to another. You know, a team of 8 people that are running, carrying 40 pounds of equipment over marathon distance, 26.2 miles. And the world record for this was done by the Army, actually. And someone had suggested to me that the Royal Marines should hold this record. So, you know, we had a look at it and we thought, right, marathon distance, carrying 40 pounds of kit, that's 18 bags of sugar in a backpack, whilst wearing your boots. You know, this is going to be a real challenge. So over the course of a year, we trained really hard and we tried to break the world record on the first attempt, and we failed by 2 minutes. The world record was 4 hours, 19 minutes and 7 seconds, and we were 2 minutes over. It was a bitter disappointment. We were a good team, but I realised that we had to turn a good team into a great team. And the following year, after another year's worth of training, we really got into diet and nutrition and taking each other to the next level and getting up early with the early training that we had to do. We all had full-time jobs at the same time. And on the second attempt, running around the streets of London, set off by the Prime Minister, it was a pretty big deal. And we got halfway and we were looking good, got 3/4 of the way round, literally with 2 miles to go, 24 miles into a marathon with all this kit and equipment. I saw one of the guys in the team, my team, who was then swaying from side to side and was really struggling, and obviously was starting to go down. Eventually collapsed on the floor on his back. Now, give him his due, whilst he was on his back, his arms and legs were still running. So you know, I got told by a consultant level doctor that if we'd tried to carry him the last half mile into the finish, then he would have died. Complete total heat exhaustion. So, you know, somebody who I'd served with overseas, actually, I knew him really well. So there's no way that I would have unnecessarily put his life at risk. He's a family man, married with a youngster. And whilst we beat the world record that year by 3 minutes, only 7 out of 8 finished, which meant that we didn't do it that year either, because that doesn't count. So that's the second failure. But what we had done is we'd turned a good team into a great team this time. And on the third and final attempt, I realised that to break a world record, a long-standing one that no one thought that we could break, they thought it was unbreakable. It stood for 19 years, this world record. We had to turn had to go from a good team to a great team, which we had, but then we had to turn a great team into a world-class team. And once I had that realization that to break a unbreakable world record, we had to literally train like Olympic athletes, from our mindset, from our physical preparation, from our team tactics and the like, and all the different elements of building a winning team that was trying to break a long-standing world record. We got to know each other better, got to know each other's wives and girlfriends and kids and families, and we became even more invested in each other. So that when it was 4 o'clock in the morning and you had to get up and go and do 12 miles of training, you knew that the others were doing it. You knew that you had to go and do it yourself. It was individual based, and that commitment to each other, that level of commitment, was exactly what was required to get us to the start line, ready to go for our final attempt to this world record. It was going swimmingly well, 12, 18 miles in, 24 miles in, over the course of 4 hours. We're doing fantastically well. And then we had another lad at exactly the same point with half a mile to go who was then started to sway from side to side. But this time, you know, having been here before, we knew that if we closed the group up and we looked him in the eye, we looked at each other and we said, no matter what, we're going to get through this. We built that resilience into this team, what I call bounce back ability. When stuff don't go wrong, we replaced failure with learning. What had we learned? We'd been here before, and we were going to overcome it. The feeling of crossing the finishing line as world record holders was incredible. We broke the world record by 2.5 minutes, coming in 4 hours, 16 minutes. And to have led that team and to have the privilege to do so was certainly one of the career highs that I've ever had in my life. Amazing team, amazing performance, and to break a world record in that way, having sort of bounced back, that was something I'll never forget, that's for sure. In regards of overcoming and failure, you know, I suppose the lessons from that was I never really look at failure anymore as that. I always look at it as learning. What can I learn from this? What can we learn as a team from this? How can we make sure that this doesn't happen again? And adopting a growth mindset, because you can have a growth or a fixed mindset. I do believe there are things that you can train and you can learn as well. But having that open mindset to be able to grow, to respond to change positively, because the only constant in life is change, right? There's always change. And you have to be able to embrace that, I think, whether you're in sport, in the military, or even in business as well. Embracing failure, making it your friend. Because, you know, if you haven't failed at anything, then you've not pushed yourself hard enough. It's the way I look at it. And embracing failure, becoming accustomed to uncertainty, and learning to expect the unexpected is something that I learned very early on in my career in the Marines, where they make it so you fail, so you get used to bouncing back, so that you learn how to be resilient, so that you learn how teams can come together to overcome. The Marines talk about being the first to understand, so that you can be the first to adapt and respond, and therefore the first to overcome. Understanding is key. Understanding a situation, whether that's a battlefield, whether it's a sports field, or your position in business. By understanding quickly, you can get inside the thought process of your competitors or your enemy to be able to adapt, respond, and overcome quickly, and thereby creating a competitive advantage.
What do you hope audiences take away from your public speeches?
Well, something that I've noticed is that people take away different things. So as I like to speak about my personal experiences and anecdotes and stories. I think I'm a natural storyteller. I love doing that anyway. But then there's the lessons that I've learned along the way that I love to share through storytelling. Everybody seems to take something slightly different away. And whenever I work with teams, I always encourage them to ask me questions. And I also say that I've been in the Royal Marines for 30 years. I've developed very, very thick skin. And if they think of a question as I'm speaking, then I always encourage and say, look, you know, if you're thinking, oh, it's a tough question for Scotty, or I don't want to offend him, well, I always encourage them by saying, that's exactly the question I wanted to ask. I wanted to challenge me. I wanted to ask me those difficult questions, and I get more out of that. I know that the teams that I work with also get an incredible amount of takeaways from some of that work as well. I try to, because this is my story and my life, I end up showing quite a bit of vulnerability. It's not uncommon for me to cry. Don't go telling anybody Marines cry, right? But I've not got a problem with showing my vulnerability and connecting with an audience. I like to stimulate hearts and minds. And I like to try and do that, hopefully in a motivational and a genuine and authentic way, with some of my stories that touch those hearts and minds. I'll speak about the equal measure of challenging and supporting people, but taking those life lessons. People have said to me that, I can be inspirational. And something that I've noticed in leaders is that good leaders, the best that I've seen, will inspire people. And what I've noticed is that when good leaders inspire you, then I'm more likely to engage with those leaders. When things just land on you better when someone's inspiring you. I've tried to follow that model, because I know that if you can inspire people, then people are more likely to engage with you. When people are more likely to engage with you, then you're more likely to be able to change and develop and help them along their way to build up some of these qualities and values. So inspire, engage, and change is sort of three different areas which I like people to think about whilst I'm doing my motivational talk.